Hello everyone and welcome back to Enter the Ether, the show all about the upcoming third-person MOBA, Ethereal Clash of Souls. I'm your host, Jam Elbows. Joining me as always is my friend and co-host, JellyKnees. JellyKnees, when's the alpha coming?
I mean, I wish I could tell you, man, Goose. I really do. The weird emphasis on ether there. The Enter the Ether. There you go. That's the show we're in now.
Yeah.
How you
I was
doing, man,
wondering
Goose?
what you were cracking up about. That was a weird emphasis I put on ether, though. I'm doing good. So tonight we're going to be talking about timelines.
Yeah.
Speaking of asking you when the alpha is going to come out.
Yeah, I know. If I had told you, you may have gotten mad at me.
Yeah.
Mr. I hate timelines over there.
I mean, Ethereal is the one that has taught me the most to hate timelines. 100%.
Yeah, 100%. I won't even deny that one.
Their very first alpha was supposed to be November 28th of 2018. If I remember correctly. It was either the 20th or the 28th. And of course, that didn't happen.
And here we are in 2021.
Yeah.
The end of 2021.
3 years later. Almost exactly 3 years. We're in October right now.
Oh, right. Yeah, total coincidence there. I'm definitely a total coincidence that we're 3 years almost to the day.
Oh, yeah. So, of course, that didn't happen. They've completely reworked everything since then.
Literally.
The builds, the myths, the map, like there's been a lot of changes since that very first attempt at an alpha. So I'm glad they delayed it because the game's going to be better off without that original one. But again, that wasn't the last time they said, "Oh, alpha this time," And then they started giving more general. Like, okay, it'll be towards the end of the year, and then it didn't happen, and it'll be this time. Yeah, just stop fucking saying it. Like, don't even give me a ballpark anymore, because you're just going to get my hopes up and then dash them.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And I mean, we've talked about it before, but when I joined the team, I made sure to tell them, like, I am not announcing things that I don't have confidence in.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's no chancing. I'm not saying... Even I don't care if it's 8 months prior. If I'm saying 8 months in advance, like, oh, this thing will be happening in 8 months. If I don't have confidence that that's actually going to happen, that's not happening.
Yeah.
Because you and I have been talking about this game for years before Into the Ether and everything, right? The whole community's been around, and it's just time and time again the under promise or over promise, under deliver, over and over and over and over again.
Yeah. We talked about this a little bit on Windu and Beard's little podcast, their little Fault Partners panel or whatever they call it. That I guess I'm just permanent on, but we were talking about timelines, and I think Windu, he was talking about how timelines force people to work towards that goal. I think he's confusing a timeline and a deadline. Like, there's a timeline that you put out to the community. There's a deadline that you set internally so that people will be motivated to work towards that goal. However, we've seen this a little. This is kind of a little bit what happened to Project Stamina. Is you can't treat volunteers as if they're paid employees.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't get mad if somebody that's not being paid to do their job doesn't do their job as fast as you want them to. You know what I mean? So set the deadlines, but you can't be too harsh with the deadlines, but make sure that deadline is met before you put out a timeline to the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Don't announce something that isn't done. Right.
Yeah.
Don't like you were saying with Fault in particular, don't announce the patch if you don't have the patch ready. Right. Don't say something that you with reasonable expectancy don't have to, that if you could drop tomorrow, you would. And I completely agree with you. Now, it's kind of a double-edged sword, and I'm sure you saw part of it, but the dissertation that I wrote on that video for the Fault Partner panel talked about finding that balance, right? And that's a balance within the internal development team, the external community at the same time, right? Going through and finding the things that, what can we do to provide information? without putting a gun to our heads and saying that if we don't meet this, we're screwed.
Right.
Right? Like how do you find and strike that balance? And you bring up a good point of volunteers. A lot of these projects, the para-zombie projects, and granted, I don't know what the internal structure of Fault or Predecessor looks like currently, but they at least started with volunteers, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, it's hard to be upset with somebody that you're not paying to do their work. One thing I think these companies can do, and it's something that we try to do in UG without going into too much detail, is even having our volunteers give us the deadline, right? Of this is what we want. When do you expect that you can get this done?
Right.
That I think is kind of the best balance you can find in that regard of we're not trying to tell you have this or else, but at the same time, we need this. So it's working out a balance of when do you think you can get it done versus when we need it and coordinating that way.
And you're still, even if you're a volunteer, you're still working for some sort of payoff a little in the long run. You believe in the game, and you believe in it enough that you're going to do all this work for it. There's going to be a payoff eventually. Like, I imagine people are going to get paid. It happened with the NFTs, but the artists kind of got paid for their work via those NFTs. Like the company made some, but a lot of that money went to the artists. So it's good to see that some of the people that have worked on Ethereal have gotten paid now, but I hope everybody that has been working on it, because I mean, time isn't free, and people have been putting a lot of time into Ethereal. I would like to see people rewarded for that time. And along those lines, like the company needs to make money out. Everybody expects everything for free, so if you got to pay a little bit for this, then it's because of the people that worked on it. You wouldn't do your job for free. Why do you expect them to do theirs for free?
Exactly. And it's one of those things of either someone's working as a volunteer with the promise or expectation to then be paid for the project when the time comes, or they're working on the project as a volunteer to build their own portfolio to then go somewhere else to be paid for their work on a project.
Right.
Right. In one way or the other, I would say that that's probably true in the majority of these games volunteer base. That's one of those two things applies to every single person. I would say for me personally, because I am a volunteer for UG, that it's kind of a little bit of both, right? Of like getting more experience in this avenue of game development and all of that kind of stuff, that if opportunities opened up elsewhere, I could pursue with better skills behind me. But at the same time, I love the project, right? And would definitely want to pursue it toward the end of staying on the project.
Right.
So it's finding how you work with these people with that expectancy and all of these things. It's all very sketchy sometimes to deal with.
But yeah, Rocket Mania from Team Soul Leave and Overprime, like he built like his own like sort of Paragon successor just on his own. It was never meant to be a sustainable game. He was just building up his portfolio to try and get a job elsewhere. From what I understand, he did get a job somewhere because of that, but now he's back to working on Overprime. So, but I mean, they never would have known about him. Like Overprime is separate from Overthrow. Like Overthrow didn't become Overprime. Like Overprime was a different thing. They were Prime X, making like some kind of weird game, and then there was Overthrow Paragon, and then they brought Rocket Mania in once they decided to make a Paragon successor. So it does help. It does help a lot. I know Project Stamina, they've had people that moved on from the project because their work on the project got them hired at other places, at bigger companies and stuff. So it's a cool thing to see. It's sad to see somebody go, but at the same time, I mean, that's awesome if people were able to get the experience working on something that they love and then end up actually getting a job somewhere else. Like a paying
absolutely. To kind of talk about timelines again, something I mentioned in my dissertation was I don't think these companies should abandon timelines, because I think that that's detrimental to their communities. But everything's a balance, right? It's how do you establish a timeline with your community of expecting things without holding yourself so hard to that the community will riot when you miss it.
Right.
or if you miss it, or if something comes up or delays or whatever. I think a prime example being Predecessor's last stress test ending essentially 30 minutes after it began for the majority of players, right? That was not something that they knew about going into it. That was not something the community was ready for. Everybody was caught off guard by that. So there's a little bit of leeway you can give in those scenarios, but having a general timeline for your community to know what's going on, what's happening, and all of that. The example that I thought of is when Cyberpunk 2077 came out, despite its own issues, they released for the next year, you can expect 4 patches, right? And some DLC content. But that's all they said. Just over the next year, 4 patches and DLC content. They didn't say each patch will come every month. They didn't say each patch will come every 3 months, whatever it was. They just very generally said, like, this is what we expect to be able to produce for you over this time frame. And I think that's a decent baseline to start with in a lot of cases for completed projects or more completed projects, right? Them putting out patches is way more acceptable than a year out saying, like, yeah, in a year you'll have the game. Congrats.
Yeah.
Because any number of things could happen from that regard. Like we said with Ethereal, they've done that several times. That's not what I'm saying. I'm thinking more on the smaller scale of keeping your community informed post-launch or with tentative launches and things like that.
What's that website people used to use? Trello. People used to use Trello all the time to post roadmaps. Like, Visionary Games had one. I think Ethereal had one for a while. Maybe they still do. Do they?
Not that I know of that we use currently.
Yeah.
But I feel like you're right. I feel like at one point they did have one.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty good way to put out. I mean, I don't know. I don't know why you would need a completely separate website to put out your sort of roadmap, but.
And even with Trello in mind, because that's a great idea, Mangoose, is you can just put out a roadmap that says, like, things that are being worked on, things that are finished, things that we want to work on. And every 3 months, update that to show the progress that has happened in that amount of time. You're not saying we're going to deliver you guys the new AI system by November, but you can post a thing that's then when it moves over to the in progress or done tab, everyone goes like, oh, wow, that's what they've been working on the last 3 months. That's what they've accomplished, right? It's another way to keep your community informed without holding yourself down to these set dates and timelines that the community will absolutely hold you to.
Do you think we'll see something like that from Ethereal? Do you think we'll see a roadmap?
I can't say with 100% certainty. I think that you've given me that idea now of doing a Trello-esque type of post of just like, these are the things that are being worked on and all that kind of stuff. I can't confirm that as it's not solely my choice to make, as much as I would like to be able to, like, yes, absolutely, we're doing the thing. I know I don't have as much power as you think, Mangoose.
So how much do I get?
How much do you get? The coveted 10%.
Is it the 10%? Okay, I was going to say, because the Malaya body pillows and.
Oh yeah, no, we're 10%.
No, I just gave you the Trello idea, and you are UG now, so. Oh man. Did you have anything else on timelines, or do you want to go on to move on to talk about Malaya's?
I think with timelines in general, it's just a kind of handshake that the community and the developer has to have, right?
Okay, yeah.
Being UG, right? In a understanding of, we're going to give you as much information as we can, but at the same time, sometimes we won't be able to give you information all the time. And doing so, if whatever reason, like we've been doing weekly posts on the Patreon, if for whatever reason we're not going to make a weekly post, then as far in advance as possible, say, this day we'll not have a post for XYZ reason, but don't worry, we'll make up for it on next post. So we'll make up for it in this way. We'll kind of give a little bit more of a heads up, because for me, and I know that I overthink everything. So when I'm waking up in the morning going like, you know what, there's supposed to be an Ethereal post today, let's go, right? And I get like super hyped, and then at 2:00 they go, oh, you know what, no post today. It's like, oh, okay, that's fine, I guess. Like, I built myself up. I'm setting myself up for failure, to be sure.
Right.
But at the same time, the company has led me to believe that every Friday I get a post. So as far ahead as you can get in front of that in saying there will not be a post on this day, I think the better, because you don't have people waking up day of thinking I'm getting a post and then being horribly disappointed.
Yeah, I get that 100%. I think that, yeah, like, that's one good thing about how Dark Predecessor has gone. Like, nobody really expects any news out of them, so when we do get news, it's like a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same, Overprime, they put out their roadmap, like they're way ahead. They did it all cutesy style and made the PlayStation logo out of their roadmap, which was kind of cool, actually. I kind of appreciated that. But they have their roadmap. I don't think Fault really has a roadmap, but they've kind of fallen into the trap, I think, of putting out these updates every 2 weeks so that people expect them every 2 weeks. And then that's kind of what we were talking about. I would hate to see Ethereal fall into that same trap. Like, but I mean, what it used to be, Teaser Tuesdays? Like, how long ago has that been? Remember when we used to have Ethereal Teaser Tuesdays?
Yeah, it's at this point, right? And definitely prior to me joining the team, we had like 7 iterations of like weekly posts that lasted 7 weeks and then was nothing afterwards.
Yeah.
Like, okay. We had, I mean, not even that long ago, less than a year ago, we had the blog posts. And there were 10 blog posts maybe after the Extra Life test, and then they just suddenly died out.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those things as well of establishing your content to know that you have content to go forward, right? I can say, because it's kind of something that I've been working on mostly myself, is with the Patreon. Every week that there is a new post that's put up, we add something to the end of the schedule to make sure that there's a new piece of content that is getting worked on to be posted 2 months in advance, right? It's something that there is a constant stream of posts going up to the community or to the patrons, and then us working on a new post in the background for the next week or whatever it might be.
I think it's doubly important for people that are paying for that content that they actually get that content. Like, Absolutely. I think most people that have that are patrons did so because they believe in the game and aren't as concerned about the updates. They do like the updates, of course, but I don't think they would get too upset. But still, at the same time, they're paying for that privilege, and you guys need to provide. And I'm glad to hear that you're doing that. That you're being so proactive with it.
Mm-hmm. And that's even before we announced the Patreon, even before all of that. That was something that I said, like, we need to have at least 2 months worth of posts ready to go before the Patreon even launches. Right? It needs to be something that we have a catalog that we can then just work into the future, instead of constantly be at the gates of like, posts are supposed to go up tomorrow. What are we gonna do for it? Right? That's not how these posts come about anymore. Right? And I'm making damn sure of that because that's stressful for everybody, right? Trying to hunt down something 24 hours in advance or less is always going to be stressful and will result in a worse product at the end of the day.
And trying to get it approved through all the various channels and
no, it's a nightmare, and I do not want to deal with that. So I'm not doing that with the Patreon. That's for damn sure.
Well, once again, I'm glad you're on the team, dude.
Thanks, man.
Been a lot better.
I'm glad to be here too. But Malaya's theme went out to everybody.
Right. We saw it on Patreon first, and then...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was actually 2 week separation between when it was on the Patreon versus when it went out to the community. And I love Malaya's theme. I think it's one of those that like fits her background and her lore so well, but in really subtle ways.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it comes down to that crackling fire. That just from the get-go, you hear that crackling fire in the background. And that just gets me every time. I'm like, damn, like that's so, because her village burning down is such an integral part of who she is. Like that being the first thing you hear and it persists through the entire thing, I think is just incredible.
And it's worth mentioning, like we talked about it a little bit last week, but we couldn't talk about too much because we don't want to give too much Patreon stuff away before it's been released to the greater community. But yeah, there's a huge difference between each myth's what do you call it? Theme music.
Theme.
Like Dante's was straight up dubstep, kind of
full of himself,
tongue in cheek, very cocky.
Dante was in his garage mixing together himself.
Yeah,
right,
right, exactly.
Very Dante, right, and that fits him very well, and he's very pompous and kind of gives off that feeling. Okay, Malaya very much not that way,
right?
So having a complete difference between the two, I think, was huge, and I think a lot of people realized in hearing Malaya's theme now that they're not all going to be like Dante's. They're not going to be voice lines mixed in. There's not going to be any of that kind of stuff. Some of them will have a more serious tone behind them and fit that myth accordingly.
Yeah, if you guys haven't heard it, Malaya's, it's very classical, and it kind of takes you on a journey. If you know her lore, you can kind of follow the journey through the music, and it's really well done. It's really nice. And the fire is part of the theme. I know that was a question somebody had, because her background is like flaming. So it did kind of seem like it was just the background and then their music was over top of that. But no, the fire is part of her theme music. Now, I don't know, I don't know if they've told us this or not. I completely forget. Did they say what the themes are for? I know you probably know, but I don't know if they've told us what the themes are for.
They have not said explicitly what the themes will be used for in any capacity, other than every myth will have their own theme.
Right.
So, like, the big thing that I guess I can talk about a little bit is if there's a new myth coming out, you go on the login page for the game, right? You're logging into the client, and the background is their animated splash art with their theme playing in the background, right? That's an easy thing that we can do that, like, shows you, hey, there's something new here. Listen to their theme, right? Kind of get just a general feel for the character, just purely listening to that theme in the background as you're logging in.
I know what I'm hoping for is that in like the character select screen, like if you're just viewing the characters in game, like the theme will play whenever you select that hero. I don't know. It might be too difficult to do it like in the draft, like because then you're picking
every 2 seconds. Like, you hear a different theme playing.
Yeah, that might be a little too difficult, but it's a really cool idea. I loved I like Dante's theme and I like Malaya's theme, both for very different reasons. So.
Absolutely.
And I just hope Iran's is real heavy, fucking like heavy metal. Because Iran is metal as fuck.
He is. I think you're gonna be surprised with that one.
Yeah.
Listening to all the themes, when I was asking the music department for those themes all together, so I could start scheduling and posting and doing all of those things, listening to them, they're all the same but very different at the same time. Right, in that kind of feeling you get listening to them of like, if you look at the character, and that's what I tried to do going into each theme, was I pulled up their animated splash art and just watched it while I was listening to it. Like, what do I, listening to this, get the feelings from this animated splash art mixed together? And so I would say that that's the ideal viewing experience for these themes, at least the first time. But they're all so different in what they encapsulate about the characters, and I seriously can't give enough kudos to the music department for the work that they've done on that, and the work that they're doing every day for myths into the future as well.
Right on. Yeah, it was good to hear. It was good stuff. Shoot. Do you have anything else you want to talk about for this week?
I think that is about it for this week. Yeah, nothing's directly coming to mind.
I thought of some things, but I want to kind of save it. I think next week I want to talk about stuff that I want to see added to Ethereal, because I've been playing a lot of Fault lately, and there's a lot of things that I've noticed about Fault. I guess what I'd like to see is stuff that let's talk next week about stuff that we've learned from the other games that could be improved in Ethereal, and stuff that the other games are doing right that can be carried over to Ethereal.
So I just thought of something else that we could talk about, and that's that as of right now, it hasn't been announced, but it will be by the time this goes up. There will be the live community corner will happen on October 29th.
Okay.
So that will be a Friday, October 29th. You'll be able to come to Twitch or YouTube. Live community corner will be happening with Skifter and I. breaking stuff down, teasing some new stuff, talking about other things, of course, answering a ton of questions, because that's really the main thing for these live Q&A, live community corners will be the Q&A aspect of interacting with people in chat constantly.
Okay, right on. Since that's so close to Halloween, I request that Skifter dresses Malaya and you dress as Exio.
Let me start working out a lot more so I can do shirtless Exio. I got, what, 14 days now to figure it out?
You got 14 days to get a fucking 12-pack, not a 6-pack. That motherfucker's got a 12-pack.
Thanks, Mangoose. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. But yeah, I think that's gonna wrap it up for this week. If you have stuff that we were talking about, like stuff you think should be carried forward into Ethereal or stuff that can be approved from other games in Ethereal, leave it down in the comments below and we can talk about it next week. But until then, I hope you all join us as we enter the ether. Mangoose! Shout out to channel members Foolish Bloodhunter, JellyKnees, Meow Mix for Men, and Stunt.